Hello, team. It's time for the Daily Detangler. Hello. I got aggravated with myself today because I didn't know how to take action on Catalyst's video he sent, right? So he shared his whiteboard brain around what he's going to be sprinting on this week. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take action on this. So I'm going to figure out how to do that. I'm going to engage and jump in. So I actually have something I did because of that video in this detangler. So I'm going to pay out one of his specific asks in this detangler. And then I'm going to explain how I built it and what I had to do to get over the wall. And that's the theme is how do I get over the wall? How do I turn a perceived wall into a little tiny speed bump or a blade of grass that I don't even notice? That's a weird analogy, but how do I lower the barrier to action? It's complex. There's walls in my way, and let me break it down. So I jumped in this morning to engage in this, and we're fixing an ecosystem. And the awesome thing about what Catalyst did was he published his brain and shared, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and these are all the dots I'm connecting, which I actually like a lot. And I'm learning to feel a lot less anxious when he does that. So that was cool. And then I listened to it and I'm like, okay, let me go do something. And I just sat here. And then I remembered the tangles. So I went and used my tangles, the tangle view. And I didn't have an issue with like trying to be right. I didn't have an issue with it's a waste of time. I didn't have an issue with I don't know what to do. I did not have an issue with I didn't have time. None of those tangles matter, but yet I still couldn't necessarily figure out what to do. So because all of these were awesome, but like, what do I do and how do I choose it? So one of the things that I did was I took an inventory. So I went back and listened to it again and listened to his very specific call outs. So instead of me listening to understand the visual here, I listened instead for what did he call out? And so he called out these things is what I heard. He called out, wouldn't it be great to explore Keynes versus Hayek? Wouldn't it be great to explore the tangles with Jenny's awesome output? Wouldn't it be great to explore communicating and storytelling? Wouldn't it be great to understand what the cause and effective is in complex adaptive systems? I agree, that would be awesome. What about simple problem solving versus complex? How do we gain consensus? Then what happens when you add one more person? How about communicating? And when we communicate an aha with 3 insights, how does that help us align? What about the details we need that are all different? And how do we communicate and code all that? And what does that look like? What would happen if we all follow the principles? What about if we see and solve? And then why is seeing so important? What about the conundrums and examples of learning by doing? How do we lean into those? How do we do the work to make something simple, but simple is hard? So how do we do that? And then how do we treat Catalyst as a lab rat? And what are the challenges that we're encountering versus the symptoms? How do we get to root cause? This is what I heard. I didn't want to listen to it a third time, but this was in the second pass. I jotted these down. So he published that he's synthesizing kind of all these at once in a little sprint he's doing. Right. So this is all he's going to be smashing together in his Dr. Octopus brain over the next 10 days. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So let's go. Let's get engaged. Let's do it. So I sat here again and I'm like, okay, in my tangle, I didn't know what to do. So one of the tangles was, if you're not sure what to do, take a minute. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, and you want to do it right. Take something, and if you need more context, or if you need more of background, then just break it down and make some assumptions. So I kind of ran into the more tangle on this, right? This got overwhelming. So I said, well, let me detangle myself and break something down. So what I did then was say, okay, well, if I'm going to break something down, what am I going to break down? So I picked something. But for me to break that down, I felt like I needed to figure out how to engage. And what I did was I kind of said, okay, let me take a deep breath. I'm gonna scope one thing down. It's good to hear his brain, but let me engage in one area. I'm gonna have the more tangle, and the more tangle says to overcome that, to scope it down. So let me scope it down. But how am I going to scope it down? What can I do? What action can I take? So if I'm not going to study this, what action can I take? And I really wanted to focus in on this idea of action. So there's this wall here, and this wall popped into my head of I'm hitting a wall, but maybe I'm not hitting a wall. Maybe there's just a wall there, and the wall represents taking action. How do I lower this wall? How do I make this wall easier to get over so it's less of a disruption in my brain? So even though I had detangled myself and I felt less anxiety, I could still, and I knew I needed to take action. I didn't know what to do per se. So I said, well, one idea is I can publish what I'm seeing. And I think I've been doing okay on that. I think there's always room for doing more of that. And I said, well, and I asked myself, if I'm gonna publish what I'm seeing, what would that look like? And that was a bit of it. But then I said, well, we've also, one of the things that Catalyst has been encouraging us to do is to share how it relates, and how do we interact with this wall, whatever this is. So how do I share what I can relate? And I think if I, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do that. And that was part of it. And I said, well, there's also some other things I can do to take action. I can actually try it and just see what the hell happens. Like, that's part of the challenge that I've learned in detanglers is, like, again, I didn't know what this detangler would be until I jumped in and started doing it. So I'm just going to try it and see what happens, and climb the wall and just see what the hell happens. So I'm going to lean into that. And then I'm going to try to, push back on it and challenge myself, and see, okay, is that really true that I can't do anything? The self-talk in my head, like, well, this is too big, I'm never going to get it right. If that popped into my head, how do I push back on that? Or in this case, I don't feel as overwhelmed. I know I can break this thing down, but what would it look like if I engage with what I'm breaking down? What would that look like? How would I do it? Would I break it into chunks? Would I break it into line? Would I break it into visuals? Like, what do I mean? Like, let me kind of think about that. And then I could actually, push back on it, right? Like, the push it back and break it down is the same. It's like two different things. There's this idea of, let me kind of debate myself, right? So there's the debate myself. What would I tell my past self? And then there's this idea of, like, how do I take one massive thing and break it down, which is part of this idea of overcoming paralysis in the more tangle. So maybe that last one's to it duplicates more of the tangles. I was trying to stay away from specific tangles and just kind of keep it specific to action. So maybe this one is just do it. So there's a try it and see what happens, and then this one on the right, maybe it's just go for it and jump in. So that's what I did, and I did that, and I took this inventory and said, let me publish what I'm seeing. Let me share how it relates. Let me just try it and see what happens. Let me push back and kind of debate myself and talk to myself in the old way of my old self. And then let me just jump in and take something and kind of chunk it out. So the thing that I picked on and I decided to do back here on the things I heard was the Keynes versus Hayek part 2, which I know Catalyst has been geeking out on lately, because we've been talking about value, and I'm sure he's super excited to see what I did with it. So here's what I did. I listened to it a bunch, and the key fundamental question in the intro to the wrap here was, what's the impact of government spending on the economy? And if I look at it through the economy lens, it's just okay, it's an economic theory. But if I look at it in terms of how does that wire people to wire people's expectations, it kind of means something else. A top-down theory means it's a bit like the government is going to spend money, and there's all this money floating around, and because of that, the spending is what matters, and it's the spending that drives the economy forward. And because there's this spending that happens, people have to get their share, right? So it's about getting your share, and getting what's out there. You just have to go get it. And what they did was, hey, we could have done better. Keynes was saying, hey, we could have done better coming out of the Second World War if we could have spent more. There was the basically consumption. This is Hayek kind of saying back to him, like, last time I checked, wars only destroyed. There was no multiplier. Consumption just shrank as we used our resources. So in other words, it wasn't about spending more money. We actually consumed less. And that idea of having more money out there created a challenge, right? And then if you have less people, if you have more and more people spending less, then what happens? And then if spending is what matters, is why such a scandal. Money flushes through the pipes and the sluices, revitalizing the economy's juices. So the more spending, the more economy grows. And it's this idea that if you can inject more into and create more supply, then people will grab it up because they want to grab their piece. And then on the Hayek side, it's this idea that there really is no economy. There's no engine to stall. No expert can fix it. There's no it at all. The economy's us. We don't need a mechanic. The economy is organic. And Hayek's big thing was, well, who's planning for who? Is it everybody doing the planning and everybody in control of their own destiny, or is there a central planning in the hands of the few? And he argued that jobs are means to an ends in themselves. People work to live better, to put food on the shelves. Real growth means production of what people demand. That's entrepreneurship, not your central plan. So it's this idea that production and growth comes from people engaging, and it's not about how many hours they worked and how much they consumed and how much resources they consumed. It's how much they contributed to the growth of themselves, their family, and society as a whole. And that's more on bottom up. So that was, and I don't know exactly if that's helpful. These are just what I saw, right? So like, I did the ask. I spent time on it. I shared my thoughts, and this is what Catalyst asked for, so I'm doing it. Now, then I said, okay, so I did that. I suppose, I can always do something and keep breaking it down and keep breaking it down, but let me stop there because this is a detangler. And then let me reflect on now what I did and like what happened, and what is the value, the subjective value of what I did. So what I was thinking was, okay, I did this. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if this is valuable. And then I'm like, well, wait, Catalyst said it would be. So it must be valuable to him. I'm reading this. I'm fumbling all over it because it's hard, but perhaps he thinks it's valuable. So really, what's the value of me doing it? Let me try to explain what I did and how I did it. So what I did was, I basically said, how do I do this? And what just happened? I published so what did I do? I did the thing. I published my observations. I'm just stating what's very, very obvious to me. I don't think there's a right way to get there. It's not about right and wrong. I'm just sharing what I'm seeing. I'm trying to zoom in and zoom out. If I was with Catalyst, I might ask some questions. I'm trying to look for patterns. I pulled out a couple things. I'm triangulating. I'm sharing clues that I see. I'm trying to make it fun. I'm trying not to think in terms of good and bad. I'm trying to be vulnerable and share. I'm trying to share right off the bat. And I'm trying to triangulate only with regard to the ask instead of trying to inject a bunch of new things. And and overall, I'm trying to lower my barrier to action by just doing it, and also trust in the process, right? And leaning into it and finding comfort in perhaps other people are doing this too, and the synthesis that he needs to do is where it really matters. And I don't, for me to get started on this, I really don't need anything else to get started. I just needed to do it. And that's where these walls came from, is like, if I'm not tangled, then what's my issue on action? And can I take action in a way that makes it easier to take action by just publishing what I'm seeing, sharing how it relates, trying it and pushing back on it, and then, chunking it out. If I can chunk it out in a way that makes sense, and a chunk it out in a digestible way, that could be what I do. So if I just change this one, I like this chunk it out. So I'm gonna chunk it out. Chunk it out is I made it, left and right side, right? So I chunked it out. I did the walls. I lowered the wall. I did the thing, and then I published what I did to get there. And I hope that's valuable. And that's me leading with me and trusting the process and connecting the dots. And that's today's Daily Detangler. So let me know what you think. See ya.